So, hello. Um, it's been a while, a very long time since my last talk, and um, what prompted this one is I was watching a video, a YouTube video on the possible existence and non-existence of purpose and meaning. And I think you can easily find the content outside. I mean, on YouTube, because it's the one with Alex O'Connor and some other guys who are not really familiar with the names, but they're quite popular people. I think one of them is the Dario, the CEO host. Yeah, he's the host of the conversation, and they start the conversation talking about how um meaning and purpose seems to be decline. And it's somewhat of a problem, and because of the decline of meaning and purpose, people are finding themselves migrating to religion. Then the question becomes, does religion provide something that um other models don't seem to provide? And I think it's true. It does. I think relative success, whether you believe in God or religion or not, the relative success of religion in general does indicate that it does have some kind of utility to the body. Now, this isn't really even about the truthfulness of the claim, but rather that, there is some utility, there is some survival benefits, maybe to the instinct or to the reality of humanness that religion provides to us and allows us to enjoy. So I do believe that regardless of whether or not it is true, it does have its benefits. But the question is, does that suggest anything grand? Does that suggest anything grand and truthful? And by grand, we mean something beyond the subjective, the human subjective outlook of life, something beyond our perception, beyond our reality, something that exists. Maybe you could say exists before we exist and exists after we exist and exists beyond our existence, something that matters more than the existence that we seem to have. That might be grand. So the conversation now is trying to find purpose. Well, what would purpose be? And I haven't necessarily finished the video. I just had, I think I was like 20 minutes and I'm trying to talk about something. So, well, do we have purpose then? Well, first question would be, what is purpose? And I was kind of listening to them trying to, discuss what purpose is and discuss how if we may or may not have it, but I think the approach they took was relatively wrong, I would say, because I think purpose is something you mainly romanticize in many ways. I think, and it's not just purpose, it's also the conversation, the concept of free will. Whereas, you would have, I think now it's really important to discuss, feelings and emotions and how feelings determine realities and determine our outlook on life. in the conversation that we're having, Alex pointed something out. He said, he tried to give somewhat of an example, an analogy, or something that would, broaden the understanding of meaning. And he said that, well, imagine here there was a robot, and the robot, and he created, someone created the robot, and the robot in this creation was meant to have meaning and purpose in creating paper clips. And what would that mean? I think that's the first question. What would that mean? What would that mean? Now, our idea of it is that would mean that the what was it? The AI robot would find fulfillment in the creation of paper clips. I think there's a problem. There's a fundamental issue there because there seems to be this intertwine between fulfillment and meaning. Because in my head, I'm thinking, well, let's imagine three different realities. Now let's imagine three different robots. These three different robots are created differently, and how they experience or how meaning is defined to them is defined in the difference of the creation. Now let's imagine the first two robots. Now the first robot is identical to the first example. Its meaning is paper clips, and when it acts in paper clips and it creates paper clips, it experiences the feeling of fulfillment, which makes it believe or know that it is in alignment with its purpose. Now, alternatively, you can have a reality, and I will believe this is a more deterministic reality, whereas the purpose of the robot is defined not by what it feels to be right, but necessarily by what it does, which means the purpose is relatively deterministic, which means your purpose is your existence, regardless of whether or not it is fulfilling. Now, that is very nihilistic, but that does also imply that there is purpose. It does also imply that your reality in itself, whether or not it's good or bad, is your purpose. Now, there is the last reality, which I think we fall under, which we are products of. And that is the reality where, whether or not there is a purpose or not, there could be feelings of fulfillment. And that feeling of fulfillment could be believed to be a purpose. But there is no purpose. You just created. Now you're created. You have feelings, and that feelings can make you believe something to be true. And this is very, I believe, akin to the discussion around free will. It's that we believe free will exists. And, yeah, we do. But why do we believe free will exists? Do we really have free will? I mean, there's a conversation to be had. But most times people say, yes, we do have free will. But what most people are saying is not that we do have free will. I mean, that's what they think they're saying, but in truth, what we're actually saying is, I feel myself to have free will, thus I should have free will. And I think this conflation comes from the fact that I believe it comes from the fact that our feelings are very much intertwined to how we interpret truth. And it has to be. We have to take our feelings seriously, but I think there's a point where feelings stop being true and they start being speculative. For example, your feelings should say you're hungry and, you should act on it. And if you say you're tired, then you should act on it. To tell you that you're sleepy or you're hungry, and you really should act on it. And then we associate these things as true. When I'm feeling sad, I'm hungry, and genuinely, I am hungry. But I think it gets to a point where things start to become more abstract. Then the truth values of feelings become less and less accurate. And an abstraction would be, I have free will. Do you have free will? And I think it's I don't believe we do. And maybe we can have talk about that some time. I don't think we do. I don't think free will exists. But then again, regardless of not where we have free will, we feel free will to exist. Thus, we accept that free will does exist. But I think the problem is the feeling. And I think the problem with purpose again is a feeling. I think, like I said earlier, there is a romanticization of the concepts of what the idea is. It is, and I think we have glimpses of it. I think we have glimpses of it. And I think that's how romanticism starts. I think for something to be romance, you must not be able to acquire it in its full. You must love it in its parts, and you must yearn for its full. But in the acquisition of the full, you realize the full is not as good as the parts. Because the full maybe doesn't exist. Maybe the parts is what exists. Maybe parts of it exist. And that is enough. Maybe part of free will exists, and that is enough. Maybe parts of purpose exists, and that is enough. I don't think it exists. I think when we're talking about these things, we're talking about parts, and the parts. I think we are beings that like stories, and stories have meaning. I think with parts, you can easily fill in the plot holes and the stories, and I think that's why romance itself, it's very attractive to us, because it's the ultimate. It's one where, the height of love is not knowing, but experiencing. It's not happening. And I think that's the peak of love. I don't think the peak of love is when you have it. I don't think it's when you don't have it. Not having love is terrible. I think the peak of love is when you have it in parts, when you're experiencing it, when you experience the fullness, then the potential, you add meaning to it in between having and not having, and then you create reality how it will be perfect to you. You feel it to be perfect. But then when you experience it in full, it doesn't need to be completely dreadful. I'm not saying it's dreadful, but it's definitely far from the peak. It's definitely not the peak. And I think it's the same thing with meaning and feeling. And Alex talked about how the New Ageism was kind of shallow in its inability to understand the existential utility in religion and what it provided, and the existential question that we do have as human beings towards life and the part that's plays in it. And I think, but then again, I don't think religion gave us anything full. And I think this is one thing I've learned about religion, and I would love ideally to make a separate content on this, about how religion is best in its parts. I think the best part of religion, or not the best part of it, rather, I think the reason why it's so ideally useful for us is that it cannot be comprehended in its full. You cannot experience the fullness of Christianity or any other religion. Experience the parts. And I think that's why it's perfect, because it is the existential, maybe not the best, maybe there's still a much better one, but it's the model is perfect because it allows us to romanticize this existential blissfulness or security that we could never comprehend in its full. And one classic example I usually give in my head is how, if we could fully understand, if we could fully comprehend mentally in terms of capability, the effectiveness of prayer, nobody would be religious. The mere fact that you could pray on something continuously and you could pray on, like, in over 20 months, you could pray about 100 things in the course of 20 months. And some of them are repeated, some of them are not. Some of them happen because of the sermon, particularly. But the point is that it's not, you've prayed 100 prayers and you get 5 answered, and the best part of the reason why it works so well is because we are the kind of beings that would focus so much primarily on those 5 that were answered and would be so thankful and gracious. We would ignore, or we are not cognitively capable of comprehending the fertility or the what's the word? I don't know if it's the right one. The wastefulness, right? I don't know, of, like, the continuous prayers, of the fact that 95% of the prayers didn't work out and only 1 in 20 worked out. We cannot comprehend it because we're not mentally capable, and I think that's why things work best in parts, because they present the idea of completeness to you, but in truth, the completeness is up to you. The completeness is you feeling the completeness. Like the peak of the movie is not when you haven't watched the movie, it's also not the beginning of the movie. It's when you know parts of it, but you don't really know all of it. That's when it's in its peak. And I think it's the same thing. I think we cannot fully comprehend the concepts of religion, of God, the stories in the books of different books, but we can comprehend it in parts, and the part that we can't cognitively put together, the part that don't hold, we fill up and we think we have the whole of it. And having the whole of it makes us believe, oh, we've figured it out, but really you haven't figured it out. You're romanticizing. And as a peak of romanticizing, I think what New Atheism tried to do, which Alex pointed out, which he called shallow, and I don't think it was shallow, but what New Atheism tried to do is to believe that, and New Atheism was like, well, you're being trans, you're being fooled. And it's just true. They were being fooled, and, it wasn't true. But I believe it isn't true. But New Ageism felt like, well, there is beauty in knowing that the movie is a movie or something like that. Or knowing that, knowing that your idea of the movie isn't the idea of the movie itself. They tried to give a full explanation, of religion, and I don't think it didn't work out, because Not because there is something about the complete nature of religion that provides something good, but rather because there is holes in religion that allows us to perfectly imagine a beautiful whole that gives us meaning towards a particular direction. Because I believe easily, it wouldn't be good enough to have something to replace religion in which we completely understand. It would not be good enough. And that's what atheism does. That's really how atheism does. Atheism is like zero. It's not complete zero, but it's zero. Religion is complex. Religion builds things up. It's trying to create a foundation and, building. Atheism is destroying, saying there is no this. They're not, you can't have holes in that because there is nothing built upon anything. There's just nothing. There are no holes. I think I could be wrong and I could just be speculating. But I think there are no holes, and the lack of holes, the lack of building means there are holes. And I think the end and the beginning are quite interlocked. I think they rotate in each other independently. I mean not independently, but they're intertwined. Whereas, and what I mean by that is, I think nothingness and completeness are kind of intertwined in this conversation, this concept. Whereas something is when you have something. In this context, when you have something that's complete, you also have nothing. And the reason why it's so in this reality to us is because I think having everything means we have nothing. Because having everything, there is a loss of the wholes which provides the completeness we yearn. But the real completeness is nothing to us because it doesn't provide us with the wholes, because the wholes allows us to impute the reality we want. I think the reality we want creates this completeness. The same thing with love. And like I said, the peak of love is usually not love. Yeah. It's when you have something you want it. Then you almost have it. Basically. But yeah. So do we have purpose? That was the simple question that was asked. And we've made it complex. But did I answer the question? I don't know. Like, do we have purpose? Did I answer? I think I didn't answer the question. Okay, let me try and answer the question. Do we have purpose? I think what I was trying to point out earlier was that we have feelings, but I think I kind of answered the question. So we have feelings, but those feelings come in parts, and those parts we fill in the holes to make a full idea of purpose. And I think with new atheism or atheism principle, maybe in general, you have zero. And with zero, you have everything, because when there's zero, there's everything. And when there's everything, there's zero. So I think new atheism was like, well, this is the truth. And there are no, real. I think maybe one could argue, because I fulfillment atheism, but I think that's when you're more curious. I think, when you reach the dead end of curiosity, you realize you built everything, but now you have nothing. And when you have nothing, you built everything. And that's why they're intertwined. So I think what Christianity provides is this existential building where there are holes you fill. And it provides the solution to existential dread. So is the purpose? No, there is that. There is that existential building with holes in it, which we feel ourselves to create a narration of purpose. In truth, we don't really have purpose, we have that. And human flourishing is best experience in dance.
Free audio post-production by Auphonic.com.